The rain pelted against the windowpane as Emily Brent, a stern-looking elderly woman, sat in her study engrossed in a book when a peculiar envelope slid under her door. Intrigued, she picked it up and examined the elegant handwriting on the front. It simply read, "Mrs. Emily Brent, an invitation." Invitations reached 9 other individuals. Among them was Philip Lombard, a rugged adventurer with a mysterious aura surrounding him. Vera Claythorne, a young and beautiful secretary, had her own demons to confront. The invitation arrived at a moment of vulnerability, giving her an opportunity to confront a tragedy that had haunted her for years. Anthony Marston, a carefree and wealthy playboy, was intrigued by the promise of excitement and adventure that the invitation held. The other recipients, Dr. Armstrong, Mr. Bloor, General MacArthur, Mr. Rogers, Mrs. Rogers, and Judge Wargrave, all had their own motivations for accepting the invitation. The rain poured relentlessly as the 10 strangers made their way to Soldier Island. The mansion stood as a silent sentinel, welcoming yet foreboding. After dinner, the guests gather in the drawing room, engaging in casual conversation and trying to make sense of their peculiar situation. They speculate about Mr. Owen and the purpose of their invitation. As the clock strikes 8, they hear a disembodied voice coming from a gramophone, accusing each of them of a specific crime. The voice accuses Anthony Marston of killing 2 innocent children while driving recklessly, Mrs. Rogers of participating in the death of an elderly woman under her care, General MacArthur of causing the death of a subordinate soldier during the war, Emily Brent of driving a young girl to suicide by casting her out of her home, Justice Wargrave of sending an innocent man to the gallows, Dr. Armstrong of causing the death of a patient, William Bloor of giving false testimony that led to an innocent man's conviction, Philip Lombard of leaving 21 men to die during an expedition, and Vera Claythorne of being responsible for the drowning death of a young boy. The guests were shocked and bewildered by the accusations, trying to rationalize and deny their guilt. The realization that they have all been summoned to the island for a specific reason begins to sink in, creating an atmosphere of unease and suspicion. Suddenly they notice 10 figurines displayed on the dining table, representing each of the guests. The rhyme of 10 little soldiers is displayed on a nearby mantelpiece, hinting at an ominous fate that awaits them. The next morning the guests gather for breakfast, still discussing the unsettling accusations they heard the previous night. The absence of their host, Mr. Owen, continues to puzzle them. After breakfast, they explore the island. They notice that there are no boats or means of communication available. During a gathering in the drawing room, Marston suddenly collapses after taking a sip of his cocktail. The others attempt to save Marston's life, but it becomes apparent that he has been poisoned. Panic ensues as they grapple with the shock and horror of witnessing a death right before their eyes. The guests are left bewildered and terrified, realizing that there is a murderer among them. Later in the day, they notice that one of the 10 figurines displayed on the dining table has disappeared. The sense of paranoia escalates, with everyone questioning the motives and honesty of their fellow guests. Amidst their unease, a shocking discovery is made. Mrs. Rogers suddenly collapses. It becomes apparent that she has died, and it adds a chilling reality to their fears. The guests are reminded that death is lurking among them, and they question who will be next. The unease is further amplified by the absence of any external communication or means of escape from the island. Tragic events continue to unfold. General MacArthur is found dead on the beach. He has been struck on the head with the life preserver, leading to a fatal blow. The discovery of General MacArthur's murder sends shockwaves through the group. They are forced to confront the brutal reality that the killer is actively hunting them down. Judge Lawrence Wargrave takes charge of the investigation. His observations and analytical mind guide through the labyrinth of clues and suspicions. However, his own motives and intentions remain enigmatic. Afternoon and dinner pass. Everyone goes to bed, locking their doors before doing so. The next morning, they find that Rogers has been killed while chopping wood in preparation for breakfast. At this point, the guests feel sure the murders are being carried out according to the dictates of the nursery rhyme. Also, they realize that with each death one of the figures disappears. After the morning meal, Emily Brent experiences a slight dizziness, prompting her to stay alone for a brief period. However, soon her lifeless body is discovered, her neck bearing the telltale signs of a fatal injection. Meanwhile, Vera decides to take a bath, only to be startled by the presence of a menacing piece of seaweed hanging from the ceiling, causing her to cry out. Bloor, Lombard, and Armstrong rush to her, only to be greeted by a shocking sight upon their return to the main area. Wargrave is draped in a curtain resembling courtroom robes, with a crimson mark adorning his forehead. Armstrong investigates and delivers a chilling report. Wargrave has been fatally shot in the head. Later that evening, Bloor is startled by the sound of footsteps echoing through the hallways. Curious, he investigates, only to discover that Armstrong is nowhere to be found in his room. Filled with concern, Bloor and Lombard search throughout the house and the island, but their efforts prove fruitless as Armstrong remains elusive. Upon their return, they make a startling discovery: yet another soldier figure has disappeared from the table. Vera, Lombard, and Bloor decide to venture outside, seeking refuge in the open grounds. Bloor, however, determines to return to the house in search of sustenance. Suddenly, a loud crash shatters the night, and Vera and Lombard rush towards the source of the noise. To their horror, they find Bloor's lifeless body, crushed by a statue that had been forcefully pushed from a second-story window. Overwhelmed by fear, they retreat to the shoreline. As they reach the beach, they see a haunting sight. Armstrong's lifeless body lies motionless. Consumed by suspicion and desperation, Vera becomes convinced that Lombard is the killer. In a desperate act of self-defense, she seizes Lombard's firearm and shoots him, believing she has eliminated the threat. Exhausted and shaken, Vera returns to her bedroom, seeking solace and respite. However, a chilling realization awaits her. In her chamber, she discovers a haunting symbol of her impending doom, a noose ominously hanging in the room. Overwhelmed by a strange compulsion, she plays the tragic finale depicted in the nursery rhyme, and takes her own life by hanging. The perplexing mystery that has confounded the authorities finally begins to unravel with the discovery of a manuscript sealed within a bottle. To the astonishment of the police, it is revealed that the late Judge Wargrave is the author of this chilling crime. In the manuscript, Wargrave openly admits to meticulously planning the series of murders that have unfolded on the isolated island. His motivations are laid bare as he explains his desire to serve as an executioner for those whose heinous crimes have evaded legal punishment. With unflinching honesty, Wargrave confesses to his own dark desires and the perverse pleasure he derives from witnessing the guilt-ridden paying for their sins. In chilling detail, he reveals how he handpicked his victims and orchestrated the deaths of Marston, Mr. and Mrs. Rogers, MacArthur, and Emily Brent. Wargrave successfully feigns his own death, playing the role of a lifeless corpse. This charade enables him to eliminate the remaining guests without arousing their suspicion. Wargrave goes on to describe his cunning manipulation of Dr. Armstrong and that he lured him to the cliffs under the guise of discussing a plan. In a calculated act, Wargrave pushes Armstrong over the precipice, plunging him into the depths of the sea. Wargrave's twisted scheme reaches its grim culmination as Vera, the last surviving guest, succumbs to her own despair and hangs herself on the noose that he had prepared. Wargrave's ultimate plan involved staging his own demise, meticulously arranging his body to fall upon the bed in a way that suggests he was carefully laid there. His intention is to present the police with a macabre tableau, an island strewn with 10 lifeless bodies, devoid of any living souls. It is through these confessions that the truth behind the murders is laid bare, leaving a lasting sense of dread and a haunting reminder of the depths to which human depravity can descend. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to QuickBooks, like and comment below.